intelligence agencies, international drug dealers, terrorists. I came across a lot of these people face-to-face with them. I spent a lot of time in Africa, with a camera in my left hand, a Mac 10 in my right hand, documenting what some of these people actually do. I've been to places like Sudan and Darfur and Chad and Congo and Zaire, and I've actually seen how the Hezbollah are working hand in glove with the CIA, doing basically the same thing, digging for, blood diamonds, and the CIA was actually using the diamonds to finance all the dirty operations, and the Hezbollah were actually using to hide their money because, a handful of diamonds is about 3, big truckloads of cash. So, there were some very hairy situations where once I literally walked into this, this local mafia. There were about 130 of them, and I have photographs of some of these people in my new book, The Shadow Masters. And there they were digging. I didn't realize they were there because, they were hidden by this, by this bush, and I didn't even hear them. And there I am, standing alone with a camera, Canon in my left hand and a gun in my right. And all of them kind of looking at me, just, think about, some Hollywood film. And, I thought to myself, well, I guess this is it. And then I thought, I have, 4 magazines in my backpack, and I got, 30 bullets in this magazine in my hand. I kind of started backed away from it and was safely made it, out of there. I got in my, 4x4 and got out of there as quickly as I could. But, I never came that close ever. The closest I came was being arrested at the airports during, the years I've been pursuing Bilderberg. So, yes. There's been some hairy situations, and I never told my wife. If I had, she'd keep me on.
Oh my God, I've always said the Bilderbergs are people we generally know. The Shadow Masters are people we won't ever know. Pretty accurate?
Exactly. Well, absolutely, because again, we're talking about the local mafia in Congo or in Zaire. Who the hell knows these people? No one. But there they are, they're digging for the diamonds, and they're actually working as partners in this business with the Hezbollah terrorists and CIA, who's supposedly, looking after America's interests abroad. So go figure, which is, again, why it's called Shadow Masters, how governments and their intelligence agencies are working with international drug dealers and terrorists for mutual benefit and profit. Basically it's just going down the rabbit's hole and finding some amazing truths, things that I really preferred not to have ever found out. But once I did, you just realize how rotten to the core the world is. And it took me quite a while to actually get over the experience.
All right. I have long suspected that there's much more to Osama bin Laden than meets the eye. Beyond the conspiracies, beyond the speculation, is it conceivable that governments or the Shadow Masters specifically have been working with this guy?
Well, absolutely. It's been documented even by, in American mainstream press. There's just been so many books written on the subject that Osama bin Laden was actually trained, in Sudan by the CIA. I've seen CIA training camps in Africa because, again, I spent several years in Africa in the 1990s, between 1994 and 1997. My domain was that, the Black Continent. And I've seen some amazing things. We're talking about Sudan. We're talking about Darfur. We're talking about the alleged murders committed by the Janjaweeds. And, I can tell you it's all, a pack of lies. Darfur is about oil. It's about natural resources, which is why you have the United States government is there, the Russians are there, the French are there, the Israelis are there, the British are there, the Chinese are there. This thing about long-lasting relationship, friendships, such as the, Anglo-American relationship, which, goes back, half a century, it actually doesn't exist. Talking about right now temporary partnerships for profit. So one day the Russians are working with the Americans, the next day, they're working in the sabotage operations against the Chinese, and the Chinese are working with Israelis, then the Israelis working with the Americans one day and against them the next. And again, it's not something you see on CNN or your local news. You really have to be there. And one of the things about being an embedded reporter is it's like going on a field trip. You basically are taken to where the Army wants you to see, and that's one of the things I've never done. I've always traveled by myself, with close confidants. I paid for all that stuff myself. And again, some of these experiences, some of these photographs in the Shadow Masters attest to the fact that what I have seen the American government, I can tell you, is profoundly unhappy by the fact that Shadow Masters came out. As a couple of my sources and my readers in the State Department have told me, they said they're very unhappy that you ever released this book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, where do we go with this, Daniel? Where do we as people, how do we fight this? Can we fight this? Or do we just have to march in tune? Just like, little robots?
That's a very, very good question. Let's see if I can explain this. 40 years ago, we were living through a major cultural paradigm shift in the generation of university age. Now, those particularly who were going to universities at the time, now, this represented a cultural paradigm shift away from the idea of producer society, which is what the United States had been the leading example up to that point, and against technology, which is, again, this whole thing about zero growth, zero progress, etc. An anti-technology post-industrial movement, of which the most colorful form of the rock, drug, sex counterculture. Now, the people who are in their 50s or their early 60s, we call them the baby boomer generation. In other words, even if people are not smoking pot and having sex with strange animals, they're still baby boomers in the sense that most of them accept the values which are common to that generation. And the values which are common to that generation are acceptance of the leading role of cultural policy changes, which have occurred during this 40-year period. Now, again, that policy change is deindustrialization of America, and I don't need to tell you or others listening to the show what that means. I mean, you see it, point blank in the United States. Now, the deindustrialization society is a no-future society because any self-respecting nation-state can only be truly independent if it can provide welfare for its citizens. Now, we have a very similar universal principle which starts that all modern civilized society, which is called the principle of general welfare, in which all modern civilized society is based. Now, what is it about now? General welfare doesn't mean some big fat guy sitting in front of the television, eating a slice of pizza, slobbering all over himself while he's waiting for the unemployment check from the government to arrive at our expense. We're talking about some very, high-valued intellectual issues. What is the intention of the existence of man, of the government? Why are we here? What is the meaning of immortality? It's to provide for the welfare of future generations of mankind and the improvement of the universe by virtue of the existence of that mankind. And the principle of the general welfare, again, as expressed in summation in the preamble of the federal Constitution, is the fundamental law. Now, younger people, who are entering their adulthood during the recent years, they're going from the adolescence to adulthood. They're looking around them in the United States and in Europe, and they say, what we're going through is a no-future society. Mm-hmm. That is what our parent generation has done to us, is give us a no-future society in which to live. So therefore, you had a conflict between young adults, that is people who are young, but who think like adults. They don't they don't look and think like adolescents or children. So they say, well, I'm not going to accept it. I don't care what my parents tell me to do. I'm not going to go there. I don't want that place. I'm going to change things if possible. So the younger generation represents a potentially healthy generation for turning society back away from the no-future society perspective. Whether it's the older generation is embedded with habits of thinking, prejudices, knee-jerk reactions, emotional reflexes, all these things which would prevent a future for the younger generation and their children. And in my book, The Shadow Masters, I dedicate the book, to these people. And I think, I say dedicated to all those who refuse to accept the spectacle of human misery and injustice as part of the norm. To the next generation who, with pride and confidence, have fiercely picked up the mantle and accepted the challenge. We'll leave it in your hands. Your humanity's last hope. The potential of the planet Earth is its future reality. And then I say, we will win this war, and the Shadow Master's new dark age be damned. So again, our future is in the hands of the younger generation coming up today. We have to make sure they understand what they're up against. We have to educate them. We have to give them the tools, the intellectual tools, the moral tools to fight this injustice. Because again, unfortunately, too many people, they're 50 and above, have basically given up and basically have accepted what has been given to them. And again, this is a no future generation. There are no quick answers. There are no, red or blue pills. It's a very long fight. And actually, the fight itself is about 2,000